Hi everyone. Hello and welcome to Series 3, Episode 1 of Holistic Emails, Email and More, a Q&A with. I don't know if you guys remember me because it's been so long, but I'm your moderator and host, Adiola Sol, Senior Consultant with Holistic Email Marketing. And for those of you that are new to the show, on every single episode of Email and More, we showcase a different topic with different panels of experts. And today, in our first episode of Series 3, we are talking about the ins and outs of CRM vendor selection, which I know is probably a hot topic for everyone. As you know, this technically is your show. We bring together the experts, but it is your questions that drives the conversations. It's definitely unscripted, unrehearsed, and tons of fun. So please ask your questions using the Q&A tab on the right. I hope my right is your right and it's not translating to the left. Okay, see, over there, over there. See, unscripted. And also, we would really love if you could provide some feedback at the end, because it's what helps us make this show a lot more better for you guys in the future. So don't be shy. Ask your questions, okay? And before we go any further, I just want to give a big thanks and to our wonderful sponsors. This series of Email and More is brought to you by our gold sponsors, Iterable and Engage, and our silver sponsors, RPE Origin. Thank you all for everything that you have done to make this series possible. And if you want to be nosy and go back to any of our previous amazing episodes from Series 1 and 2, you can find them all on our lovely YouTube or on Holistic Emails website. I have put the link in the chat, which I'm going to do in like a jiffy. So, yeah. And then we move on. Okay, so today we have put together a brilliant panel of our speakers, and hopefully we're going to be discussing with some of our top minds vendor selection and the ins and outs, what we're supposed to look out for, the do's and the don'ts, because obviously we need to hear about those too. So we have Kath Pei, who is our author, best-selling author, and award-winning thought leader of Holistic Email, and she's the CEO of Holistic Email Marketing. We also have Jacob Margard from Pandora. Is Jacob there? Can you see him? Yes. Hi. Tracy Alunga of Capgemini. Do you want to give us a wave? And Phillip Johnson of Iterable. Thank you. Okay, so guys, while you're getting your questions into the Q&A tab over there, we're going to ask our panelists to just quickly introduce themselves. So I'm going to pick on you, Jacob. Why don't you tell our audience who you are and what you do?
Yes, my name is Jacob. I work with Pandora, based in Copenhagen, Denmark. I'm heading up the global email department for Pandora. Been doing that for the last 2 years, and we just recently been through a vendor selection. So this is definitely still a hot topic for us. There's a lot of learnings that I can hopefully share with you guys here today. So happy to be here.
Wonderful. And Tracy, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, I'm Tracy. I'm a CRM consultant at Capgemini. So in my past role, I was on the end user side. So I know the pain point when it comes to vendor selection, what to look at, what to be considerate about. So yes, I'm happy to be here.
Amazing. Thank you, Tracy. And Phil?
Thank you. So I'm Phillip Johnson. I'm a senior solutions consultant at Iterable. For anyone who hasn't heard of Iterable, we are a vendor, a customer engagement platform. But prior to that, I also have some end user experience. So currently going through a few vendor selection processes myself, as I'm of course working for a vendor. But yeah, really nice to meet everyone, and looking forward to sharing some knowledge.
Amazing. And Kath?
Hey, I'm Can you hear me okay? Because, yeah. I'm Kat Pay, CEO of Holistic Email Marketing. We put together Email and More. We've got very much a heart for the marketer to try and help you guys learn things, and that's why we love to bring all these wonderful marketers and experts together to give you all their insights. So it's kind of like, you know, the shared wisdom of the crowd. So it's good. But yeah, so I've written a book, and which is there. And pick it up if you haven't already got it. Thanks.
Amazing. So guys, you've met our panelists. So let's just get stuck into the questions. But as I've said before, if you do have any questions, please just drop them in the chat. We will make sure we get to them. This is your session. So if there's something that is burning on your mind, even if you think, oh, it's a bit of a silly question, there's no such thing, as I always say, as a silly question. So pluck up the nerves and type that question away. But I'm going to kick off with this one. So do you guys think that someone needs to provide a formal RFP, or can they just wing it when it comes to vendor selection? I'm going to throw this at someone, but I feel like I see Tracy reaching for her unmute button.
I think you can wing it, but then it depends. It depends on the size of the organization, but also the size of the project. For some companies, you don't really need an RFP, and especially if you map out your requirement, you won't really need RFP. But when you're looking at bigger projects, it's always nice to have like a security blanket to always be able to go back to the RFP if there is any issue in the long term, or just to go back to the RFP if you do have any question that you're not unsure about what has been agreed on, or just to remember what has been discussed on during the RFP process. So it really depends. It will be 50-50, I always said.
Okay. What do you guys think? Jacob?
I would say, of course, it depends on the size of the organization. But I would say that no matter which approach you have, it's always good to scribble down your thoughts, because it also takes you through the process yourself up front, and it probably also helps the vendor or vendors that are chipping in to actually get a better understanding of what's the most important parts of the selection from your side. So I would say yes. Do it either just in one piece of paper to scribble down your words if that's what you have time for. But besides that, it's of course up to yourself. But I think it helps on from the vendor side to better understand your company, your visions, and your requirements for the selection.
Yeah. Okay.
I agree, because also it helps you to make sure that you're comparing apples with apples. So you're asking them all the same questions, right? And you're making sure that your needs are going to be met. And so, yes, I do agree also from size. So if you're smaller, you know, maybe it's overkill to do that RFP, but maybe, you know, at the very least, you need to sit down and really, really think about it. Think about use cases. Think about exactly where it is that you want to be going. How long do you want to have the system for? What do you want it to help you to achieve that your current system doesn't do? And also, ideally, start with the strategy. If you've got your strategy in place, and you should, because it's going to be helping you to meet that strategy, then use that, pull out elements of that to be putting together, either in your questions or in your RFP.
Yeah, okay. There's some good answers there. And I definitely would agree. I think it's important to have things, like you said, Jacob, knotted down. My goodness. Jotted down. So it's good for you to at least have to highlight your requirements, some of the specifics, because it will keep the conversations where you need it to be. I think sometimes when you're engaging with certain vendors, they can bedazzle you with some of the tech, which can steer you off course. So just even having those penciled down, just key highlights or key bullet points is very, very good. It's a very good thing to practice throughout this process. And Phil, I can see you're unmuted. Do you want to chime in here?
Yeah, the only thing I was going to add on top of that, I saw Craig Kent in the comments made a really good point that a lot of people don't know what they want until they write it down. So yeah, very much agree with what everyone said. By documenting what you need and what you want, it makes the process a bit more objective. And like to Cass' point, I've seen RFPs where like you see the vendor just has columns next to one another, so they're easily comparable. But yeah, that said, there are some instances where you don't necessarily need an RFP if it's a particularly small company, if they haven't figured out exactly what they want. Sometimes we receive RFPs, honestly, like 70 plus pages long, and that's not necessarily beneficial for the vendor or the person submitting. So yeah,
that's like a dissertation.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so then I guess like let's build upon this. What are good things to have when considering creating an RFP? Because like you said, I've actually seen somewhere they are close to 70 pages. There's diagrams all over the place, Venn diagrams. There's customer, breakdowns in terms of their different personas, which might not necessarily be relevant for this process right now. So I guess if you guys could just tell the top two things or your key two things, three if you're feeling fancy, that should be included when considering writing out an RFP. What needs to be in there?
I can go. I can go first. First thing for me is really making sure that all the necessary teams have inputted. Sometimes you might get a marketing heavy RFP or a tech heavy one or a legal one. So it's important that you have kind of all those cross-functional teams have their inputs. Otherwise, you'll find out later that you've kind of missed key information. And then the other tip that I would give is really good and smooth processes have happened whereby prospective customers have done a bit of research beforehand. So if they have kind of hard requirements or things that they know they need or that they can't have, having them up front means that they can kind of eliminate or highlight certain vendors earlier, which again kind of just makes the process a bit more efficient. So yeah, they would be my top two.
Nice. Anyone else?
Go ahead, Tracy.
Yeah. So for me, I think what's important is to make sure that you map out your requirement, because sometimes we tend to look at just the technical side of the requirement, but we forget about the process that can be data process, people process, any type of process available. So we need to make sure that we map it out and explain what we are looking at having available, but also, as Phil mentioned, making our research before requesting RFP is important, because like this we will know what should we expect from the people who are responding to that RFP. And also we will be able also to understand, based on the answer they're giving us, are we learning something new that we didn't know? And that can be also seen as a kind of bonus for us.
Perfect. No, some really good tips here.
If I can add to that one, Adiola, then
Of course.
yes, of course, it's super important to have your requirements in place. But I also know there's a big trap that you can fall into, just having a long list of functionalities that the individual vendors should be able to fill in, because then it's just a matter of comparing different vendors with how many ticks do they actually get in that Excel sheet, rather than it's fine to have the overview of what they will actually be able to deliver, but then you need to do some hard cuts in terms of what is actually our needs to have and what's our nice to have. And then the other part, if you flip the coin, is also how easy is it to integrate, how easy is it to work with the whole usability part around it, because there are enterprise solutions out there that can do everything that you could imagine, but you need to take into account what is the cost, resources, time to actually get to use all those functionalities. And there's often, I think there are many who falls into the trap by buying the big enterprise solutions. It's like it's like buying a Ferrari when all you need is a scooter, and then you end up just having that Ferrari just parked in the garage because you don't have anyone to actually help you fix it so it can drive. So it's finding the right balance between what you actually need is what is the nice to and icing on the cake, but having a clear focus on that one. And also, of course, also as Craig mentioned in the chat here, look into the long-term perspective. What is it that you potentially need out in the future? You might not need it right here and right now, but you might need it in a year's time. Then it needs to also cover that part.
But that's really interesting. I totally agree with what Stephen is talking about too. You know, put in the what's missing with your current solution, and that could be features, that could be processes, that could be customer service, could be all of them, right? But also, we've got a client who's going through this at the moment. And one of the things that, I was advising them when we were speaking about it is I said, when do you want to be moving, right? So how long do you want to have this system for? They're like 10 years. We don't want to do this again. It's an expensive process, right? And so we want it. And I said, okay, well, you've got to see, is it going to be future-proof for 10 years? But then I thought about it, and I thought, because I've never had a client who said 10 years before. So you think, actually, you only need to be future-proof for the next 5 years, because within 5 years, the system will have updated again, because consumers will have changed, technology will have changed, everything will have changed. And so, as long as you are assured that that is a system that is continually, you can see the roadmap, and that's a really good request too. Can we look at your future roadmap? So you can see how quickly that they're updating and improving the system, what they've got, coming on board. But yeah, I think there's everything that everyone said here, but for me, it always comes down to those use cases, because this is really where it is, and those use cases will be based upon your strategy. So making sure that because like Jacob was saying, you can have, we want the best of the best, and we want absolutely everything. But if you actually haven't got a use case for using it, then why are you paying for that? It doesn't make sense. There's a lot of great systems out there who will give you what you need for a lot less, and you're just not paying for the features you don't need. So yeah.
That's a brilliant point, and actually leads on very nicely to the next question, which is, how should someone actually begin the process of selecting a new vendor? Where does one start? There's so much out there. What is the first steps that a brand, retailer, whatever? What's the steps that they should take in order to get this thing going? I feel like I need to pick on someone? And I want to pick on Phil. Sorry,
yeah,
Phil.
No, it's fine. I think one of the first things is really, if you haven't got it already, is like executive buy-in. So making sure that it's not kind of like an independent or a passion project, but that you have that obviously financial, but then also kind of strategic backing from those in your company who are actually going to fund it. And then once you know that's happening, then you can generate a bit of excitement around it. And when I say that, I know some people might be thinking it's like vendor selection. How do you kind of create excitement? But it's important that, again, kind of those different teams, so marketing, tech, legal, one, they know it's happening, but then they know why it's happening. So then when it comes to getting them into workshops or getting them to contribute to the RFP and things like that, they know kind of from the top down why it's happening. So I think, number one, getting that executive buy-in, and then two, a bit more tactically and pragmatically understanding what date do you need to go live by. So maybe you're kind of depreciating like an old platform. Maybe there are kind of other reasons. Maybe there's a merger or something like that. Once you have that date, then you can start to work backwards as to, okay, how long would an implementation take? How long does the vendor selection process take? And then you always add that 25-40% buffer just to help. So they'd be kind of the first two things
I think those are fantastic points, to be honest. I think that we've seen in several occasions where someone is going through a vendor selection and forgets about the other business areas that will potentially be using the system itself. at times, I guess it can be quite a siloed project where the email team may assume that they are going to be the only or sole users of this particular new system, which actually turns out later on, if we talk about future proofing or scalability, content teams want to plug into it, or your digital teams also want to plug into it. So they, start to enforce what we call holistic marketing or 360 marketing. So yeah, it's a really good point to make sure all stakeholders, even if you feel like someone isn't going to technically be a stakeholder in this present moment, they will eventually become one, let's say, in 12 to 18 months time. So yeah, really good point there.
But I would also add to that, that when you're actually doing that, getting the stakeholder buy-in and everything, that it's made very clear who the owner of the project is and who the main benefit of the system will be, right? Because I have seen time and time again, and it's not happened once, it's happened at least 3, maybe 4 times in my career, where the actual project and the CRM system has been hijacked by IT, and IT do not use it. IT are not sending the campaigns. IT have got nothing to do with it other than the initial integration, right? And so, and that's because at the very, very beginning, it wasn't completely, sold as being, this is what we need it for. So again, just be very careful. That generally only happens though with the larger companies, obviously.
Good.
I think it's a super important point, Kev, and not telling the whole story here, but we had our IT department going to renegotiate with one of our vendors, buying additions to the platform that we definitely wouldn't need in marketing. So it's a bit like sending IT out on the market to buy eggs, but they're coming back with a cow, and you're like, what do I need it for? I got it at a good price, but it's super important that in many cases that it's actually marketing driving the process with the help and the support from IT, of course, but it needs to be the users in the end who knows what they'll be doing with the platform that actually they need to drive the vast part of the process.
Yeah. So and on that line, sorry, can I chip in? On that basis, and I know that Pandora has just finished this. Recently you've started onboarding and everything, started using the new system. What would you say would be your one piece of solid gold advice? What was the kind of thing? So that's a definite thing. Do not do. What would you say that you would do? What did you find out really, really benefited you during this process?
I think what we did was the most important thing was to do a sandbox demo with the vendors, actually getting access to the platforms, actually connecting it with some of the data that we have, because that was an eye opener both on the marketing and on the IT side, because that's where you get to work a bit with the system, either on demo solution or a sandbox where you actually plug it in, because that's where you actually see what are the benefits, how easy is it to work with from our side, because a lot of vendors can have a lot of beautiful marketing presentations. They can show it in their own setup where everything just works smoothly, but how does it actually apply on your end? And that's where you need to take that extra time to go through that, to be fully convinced that it's the right choice that you're making.
That's really good advice. Yeah. And so, and what I'm getting from you guys as a collective group is, when you're looking at finding a new vendor, it actually doesn't even seem to start. It doesn't seem to begin with the vendor itself. It's more the internal work. So making sure you have all the right stakeholders in place, that you have the executive buy-in, that you have the right amount of budget, that there is an understanding what the platform is for, and then you can use that as your kind of weapon or your arsenal to take to market to ensure that most of those conditions and criteria are met. Which I think is actually really good, valuable advice, especially to those who are watching us right now. It could be a step that usually isn't considered as much. So it's nice to hear you all kind of say in unison that this is an area that really does need a lot more attention. and to be thought through a little bit better when, to go into vendor, let's start the work in-house first. So that's really, really good. So before I move on to the next question, does anybody else have anything that they want to round off on, or can I?
Yes, I would like also to add, when looking at vendor, we also need to look at the long term. So yes, we're going with that capability, that platform, but in future, what or how can we use their platform and also the platform that we have in-house to provide the best customer journey? Because by getting that platform, we want to make sure that we're always here to respond to customers' needs. So we need to make sure that if there will be, we know some platform will constantly have implementation changes. As Cass mentioned, the industry is constantly changing. For example, we've got like Apple with now we're not able to look at the open. So how we going to make sure that what they are selling us today will be valuable for the future? And if not, are they prepared to look at solution to make sure that in the long term, it will always benefit us, but mainly the customers?
Yeah, that's really good advice as well. So come armed with questions to make sure that you're also asking those vendors, what is also your future proofing plan for the next 5 years? So as well as my own goals of how I want to grow my channel or the business, etc., how are you also doing that in alignment? And again, I don't think it's something that is asked often, or if at all. Well, I don't think we're in the business of asking vendors how are they also future proofing, or what are their tech capabilities going to look like in the next 5 years, 10 years or so. So actually that's a really good point, because it also allows you to think as to whether or not this is a good match. Are they going to be able to scale the way that we want to scale? Are they investing the way that we are investing? So really good point, Tracy. Really, really good point. And I think this brings me on nicely. You guys are just doing all the work for me. Thank you. Just brings me on very nicely to the next point. But before I even go on to the next point, guys that are watching, if you have questions, this is the time. We will happily drop everything to answer your question. No question is too big or too small. I know I'm being extra right now. I don't know why I'm so hype. But please do ask any question where use these minds at your disposal. So yes, talking about building on from what Tracy had just said, how much time and resource, should one put into preparing for vendor selection and budget as well? I mean, I know we're not going to throw out some huge numbers, but what do you guys think in terms of the time and resources that's needed when going into vendor selection? What are the pitfalls, or what are the things that need to be looked out for?
So, well, I mean, the one thing I can say is it will always be more than you budget for, either cost or time, resources, because it's always going to be more complex, slower, all the rest of it. So it can get quite, and that's the whole thing, is that you have to always put that little contingency kind of time or budget in place as well.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I have, I meant to pop this in earlier. One of my big tips, right, which kind of fits in with what we were saying earlier, and this isn't to sidetrack it away because we can start talking about the budget and time, everything afterwards, is when you're and this actually will help with the timing and everything, but when you're actually having your demos, please make sure that you have got your future account manager at the demo. Okay.
Yeah.
The reason for being is that, as you know, we all know that the sales guys are totally awesome and they're doing a great job. But it's kind of like, and I don't want to say this because it sounds a bit weird, but it's almost to keep the sales guys from just not being honest. I'm not saying they're dishonest, but sort of keeping them real. That's basically it. Because the account manager will be there going, wait on, they're overselling. I have to make sure I can deliver this. And then he will sort of make sure that it happens. And so that is going to help a lot at the end of the time when you're actually going back and saying, well, wait on, you said you could do this, but we can't see how. Can we see this? So it will help with the time reducing to actually keep it real from the start.
That's a good point. Yes, that's a good point. When I was on client side, I definitely did get views with some very handsome sales reps. And so, it's easy to be charmed by the salespeople, but you do need your account managers there to keep that in check and to make sure, like Kath said, your expectations are being met and not overpromised. So I think that's a really good thing to put into consideration. A very good tip, actually. Does anybody else have any, insights in terms of like the time and resources that will be needed, as well as budget when it comes to looking at vendor selection? What are the key primary things that might take up a lot of the time?
I think when you have your strategy in place, you have been through the whole process with your stakeholders, then you're actually quite set to go along. And then on our end, Cafe, we actually didn't went over budget and we didn't went over time in terms of migration, because we just took the worst case scenario, and that's what we sort of like sold in to the rest of the business. That means that we'll just be able to over deliver on the end, and that's sort of like could also be a way to work around it, being pessimistic in terms of how much it will actually take in terms of resources, in terms of time, and then being able to deliver a bit faster than that one. Then it's always impressive.
It's quite a good point. A good tip again. Tracy, do you have anything? Because I see you're on mute. Or Phil?
I think, yes, in terms of time, yes, I totally agree with Jacob. Let's think about the worst case scenario and deliver in a shorter time frame. But also, we need to make sure that we do have, we also show the vendor what we like, our vision, because they're sharing to us a demo of their platform, but is our vision will match with that demo? And that's a question more of people's skills, people's time will be involved. So that side of timing cannot be measured, because sometimes you will need one workshop and then a couple of workshops, and then you will understand straight away. You will see if they are responding to your requirement. But sometimes it might request like lot of workshop, lots of people to be involved, lots of team to be involved, and sometimes from their side just request like someone who's technical, who've got hands-on the platform, to make sure that they understand what we're trying to do. So yeah.
Yeah, I think Tracy makes a really good point, whereby sometimes it can be easy to take a platform and you have kind of a wish list of features like, oh, this is really cool, or we've seen somebody else do this. But when it comes to the RFP and the wider evaluation, and even us from kind of a vendor perspective, we don't want to just kind of like sell you features, otherwise it won't work in the long run. Really want to understand what's the value you're trying to kind of achieve, and then kind of magnifying out and saying, okay, which features can then ascribe to that value and then help you get there. So yeah, really agree with Tracy on that point, where you want more than just features. You want to understand who you're working with. To Cass' point, definitely bringing it the account manager or CSM. Maybe you can even speak to like technical support, or another thing that again we encourage is speak to current customers as well, because as you're saying, you can have that handsome account executive that will disappear once that signature is there. So it's always best to speak to real customers, and then even use kind of like resources on Slack, like Email Geeks and things like that, to get kind of a fuller picture of the person you're about to spend lots and lots of money with.
Amazing. Look at Phil just dropping all the gems there. So yeah, no, these are really, really great points. And we've had a question come in. So thank you, Stephen, and everybody else watching. Please follow in Stephen's footsteps and ask us questions. So I'm going to throw this in the ring. How many vendors would you recommend initially narrowing down to? This is a free-for-all, Hunger Games, whoever wants at it first.
So again, It's going to depend on whether you're doing a formal RFP or not. But generally speaking, it still isn't going to be a huge amount more. I work with a client and I know their program inside and out. We have weekly calls, all the rest of it. Most of the program I've actually strategized and helped them to implement and all the rest of it. And they said they want to change vendor, which I was actually quite happy about. And they said, can you give us some names? I went, okay, here's 4. These guys here, that will all be great for you, right? So from my perspective, the only thing they needed to work out was more the finance than anything else. I knew that they would, see them through and they would do everything above and beyond what they're currently doing. They then said, thanks so much. And they went and extended it to 10. And guess who were the top 4? The ones that I recommended. And then the top 2. And then the one. So it's like gradual sort of out of that top 4. So understand the market. If you don't understand the market, you haven't got the time to understand the market, then call upon your consultant or someone who does know your agency. They can help you. They don't have to do the full RFP. I didn't do the RFP for them. I'm just literally being on hand, just sort of tapping in, saying, have you done this? Have you checked this? What's the story here? Blah, blah, blah. Just, every now and then, just helping them to guide. And, but I don't see, they themselves said, it was so time consuming because we did 10. And I'm going, I know. That's why I only gave you 4. Seriously. So yeah, don't go over the top. Today, as has been mentioned, if you are choosing good, vendors and who your competitors use, or you've seen them around, that kind of thing, then start with them and then dwindle them down to ones that you think are going to be meeting your needs. So I wouldn't be going for more than 4, maybe 5 maximum.
Okay.
But that's for a non-RFP. RFP, you can go a bit wider because you're a bigger system and there's more variables to be taken into consideration, right? So I would go longer, a bigger list if you've got an RFP or enterprise system.
Okay, Jacob, are you trying to throw in?
Yeah, we probably did exactly what you described here, Kath, because we went initially with 14 different vendors, which we had demo sessions with. We probably also asked you up front which
Did
ones
you say
would 14, 1, 4. Well, not 40, but 14. 1, 4. And yes, we did spend a lot of time with them, and we might also have spent some of their time that we shouldn't have done. But on the other side, we did learn a lot from talking with these different vendors, and it was important for us to go through to ensure that we didn't miss out on any of those that could potentially be on the list. So we asked CAF and you guys. We looked at Gartner. We looked at a lot of different sources and asked around, and that's where it just end up with a long list. We then initially went down with a short list for 4 vendors, which might have been a bit too much. We could potentially have gone with 3, and then we had a short list in the end for only two vendors up against each other. So you can go broad, but then it's at least important to narrow it down quite fast.
Okay, Jacob,
Yeah.
it's quite interesting. Would you say that you started off quite, sorry, just for the audience, do you think you started off quite wide in essence to actually understand the market and what's out there? So maybe for the next time round, you won't go as wide because you kind of have a better understanding of the landscape.
Yes, and I don't have a long background in email, so for me it was also important to understand what's out there, what am I potentially missing out on, what do I need to have on the list, what is actually feasible, and what's out there. So it was also a learning process for myself and some from my team where we needed to be certain that we were going with the right ones, because there's also, you can look up a lot of different lists sorted by different means on on different sources, and they would always recommend a lot of different platforms. So it's not easy. It's a jungle out there.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you, because I think what I find sometimes challenging is you can go with like so many, like 10, 15, 20, but sometimes you get lost as well, because you've got so many information coming from like all different supplier. And obviously, as you mentioned, Adeola, the sell rep will tell you like, yes, you can do all of this. They're just gonna say like, yes, yes, yes. But then it's where you need to do a bit of your research, and then by doing that pre-research, like that's research ahead, and also by talking with I don't know, the IT team, or looking at the capability you already have in house, and kind of talking with them, you will be able to straight away narrow it to up to 5, 4, 5, 3 sometime if you're lucky. And then you will be able as well to know, is one, is that in your budget? Two, is that response to some of your process? Because again, they will be able to say, yes, it's response to your process, but what additional information can they provide me in terms of process? And then three as well, making sure that that company or that supplier is a fit for your business, because that's going to be people who will be part of your team. We see them sometimes as a third party supplier, but no, they're going to be people who will be working with you on a day-to-day basis. So you need to make sure that they will be perfect fit for you.
No, amazing. Really good point, Tracy. I think those are some good key takeaways. And Stephen, I really thank you so much for your question. And I do hope you that helped answered it for you. What I'm getting the gist of the panel, they're saying 3 to 4 is a sweet spot number. But if you want to do a bit more research, or if you're maybe not as well versed in the email universe, then it's potentially good to go a little bit wider just to have a better understanding, but you're still going to narrow it down to your top 3, top 4 anyway. So thank you. We do have another question from Aiden. So Aiden's question is, I think we're probably going to focus on the second half of this question, but the main question is, which vendors which vendors essentially should be in a short list? I'm not sure if we're able to kind of bring out brand names, but the key thing here is, what are the most wanted features that CRM tools have? And I think that's actually quite interesting, and something that perhaps you guys, again, Hunger Games, who wants to, what features, should a CRM tool have in order to be even considered to be shortlisted? My number one feature of all time is HTML drag and drop. Okay. If that doesn't exist, I don't want to know. So if they're not allowing you to create easy templates, where you're able to customize them and make them on brand, but anybody, even your 4-year-old could create an email, they're not in the process. They're not in the mix for me. So what about you guys? What features need to be in there?
I always said it depends on the skills of the team. It depends on the skill of who will be using the platform. Because as you mentioned, maybe in your team you already have an expert in HTML, so you don't really need to have like those drag and drop capability. Or maybe you need AI CRM tool to provide AI features, because some capability don't do it. So you just need to make sure first that you check what you've got again in-house. Make sure that, okay, if we don't have that feature, it's fine. So I can look at another feature. But from my side, in addition to that, I would said AI. I think nowadays AI is really important, because you want to make sure that you're displaying the right type of content within the email or the subject line, or you're selecting the right time of send for the customer.
Yeah, in the last 2 selections that we've done with clients, the AI component was a very big thing. But not only that, understanding how well it works and how accurate it is and how flexible it is also a really, really big thing too. But yeah, personally, I like the drag and drop life cycle, journey builders too, because right. So Adiola and I, we were working on this project, and they had the most weirdest wording. It actually turned out to be in reverse of what it actually was. And so sometimes when you're building your if this then that, or you're using more technical wording, you sit there and you're spending 20 minutes going, what am I, that kind of thing, and you can get it wrong. Whereas the drag and drop actually really, they kind of simplify things and make it easier. It's a bit more safe proof as such. So I quite like them. But I would love to know from Phillip, what are the most, it's like, what are the common denominators between all the RFPs that you've ever seen at Iterable? Like what are the sort of like leading features? Because you've kind of got the inside goss there.
Yeah, it would, to kind of Tracy's point in terms of capabilities, it also depends on what's in your tech stack today. So some people, for example, they have a CDP and that is already carrying out a particular function, so they don't necessarily need to consolidate user data within Iterable, but then others won't, and so then they look to a vendor to have some of that functionality. But to answer your question more directly, Kath, I'd definitely say AI, there's definitely kind of features and trends, and AI is very much at the top of that, but then also completely agree. It's very easy to label something as AI, but you need to kind of prove that it works through kind of reporting and tracking it. I would also say that reporting capabilities, and that's kind of another thing that we're seeing more and more people ask for. And then the one that maybe it's a given for me, but maybe not for everyone else on this call, but is a journey builder. So drag and drop, but not for that email creation, but for creating those cross channel journeys. I'd say, yeah, they're kind of a big three.
Yeah.
Can I throw in another question on, especially on the AI functionalities, because everyone can have some sort of AI, but how do you then test that up front in terms of how powerful it actually is, because you can get all sorts of AI. So how do you lay that out up front and actually get those insights on whether it actually works, or whether you want to bring a third party, have your own data scientist build the AI for you at a later stage?
Yeah. So I've actually done a couple of RFPs for personalization tools, right? Now you think that choosing a CRM vendor is kind of like, whoa, there's so much out there. You should see the personalization tools. It's the wild, wild west. Everyone does it so uniquely and so differently. So it really, really is hard to actually understand. And this also spreads over into now the CRM vendors who are also who have got their AI integrated as well. Everyone does it so differently. So yeah, that's in another little sort of area on its own. I agree.
Nice. Okay, Aidan. So I guess what we're seeing is just having really good email building functionalities, having great drag and drop functionalities in terms of not just journey building, but mapping out the customer segments as well, looking at AI and personalization. So I guess if you are in the market of a vendor or a tool, those are the things that you may want to kind of, if it's necessary for your business, obviously. Don't just have it there if it's not going to aid you in any way, shape, or form for what you want to do. But that seems to be the key things that are coming out of our panelists today, which is awesome. Yeah. Okay. So, right. Do we have time? We've got a minute left. That went real quick. Okay. So.
No. About 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
Yeah, 10 minutes.
Because it says here 5:20 wrap up. Okay. Okay, so we got time. Okay, so then the next question then. This needs 10 minutes. Onboarding. Let's have a good old chat about onboarding. So we've done our RFP, we've written out our requirements, we've more or less gone through the process of informing our stakeholders. We've looked at our different vendors. What is it that we need from them? Thanks to Aidan's question. We've understood the things that we need to look out for. We've chosen them. Now we go through the onboarding process. We're going into the deep intergalactic space what does this process look like from your experience, guys? What does it look like, and how long does it take? What are the things that people really underestimate, but they need to give a lot more thought and attention to?
Can I drop 2 words?
Go
Legal,
ahead, Tracy.
like 3 words, legal and IT.
She went for the big boys. You need legal and IT. Forget the data. Get your legal requirements up to scratch. Okay, Tracy, do you want to expand on that just a little bit, please?
I think, so personally, I think like setting up a supplier can be quick, but what always take time is like legal team to make sure that like we've got GDPR. If you are a company who's like based across the globe, regulation, legislation will change. So that's again a long process because you need to make sure like you're covering all aspects. I'm not an expert on illegal, but I know that side take a long time. Then IT,
Wonderful.
because they will be the one implementing. And when I look at IT, it will also cover a bit of data, because if we do have data stored somewhere else, we will still need support from IT to make sure that we are able to push that data in that new platform, for instance. So that's where I'm thinking of legal and IT. But then after that, there is another side, another layer where it's looking at prioritization, because again, that process is really long. So once you set up once the platform has been set up, what's next? What do we need to prioritize? What needs to be first? What we need to look at?
Good points, Tracy. Really, really good points there, especially the prioritization. Once you get on board, which pieces of work or which products are going to take precedence, and that will actually inform the sets of data that I guess will get imported or injected into the system first to help make those, priority projects run as they need to. So yeah, really, really good points there.
And
Oh, go on.
in Pandora's case, it was not just the actual elements, but it was also the markets, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a list of the markets, and what we did was actually to roll out in one strategic market to begin with. We roll out in UK to fix all the integrations, fix out the child diseases, because we knew some things would come up no matter how well we did it, and that also helped us fix those things before we could roll out eventually to the other markets. And then we both taken a prioritized list of markets in terms of the sequence that we rolled it out, but also sequencing in terms of the functionalities. We brought over the campaigns first, and then bring over the automations which are reliant on the data afterwards. So that's sort of like the sequencing we chose to make it work, and it worked out for us.
I would also say, from a vendor perspective, I would encourage anyone who's selecting a vendor to put the onus on the vendors to kind of show a plan as to what that onboarding will look like, exactly what resources are you going to have available, what exactly are they going to be doing, are they actually going to be kind of implementing the campaigns, or are they going to be guiding a team, in which case you then need to make sure you have a team and that team's time is protected. So very much encourage everyone, rather than kind of like waiting till signature, to understand during the sales process exactly what that onboarding looks like, so it's not a nasty surprise later.
Yes.
I was thinking about that too as you guys were talking. One big thing I remember with one client, there were several. The marketing department is split into at least 4 different cohorts, but they all needed to be onboarded, not just their campaigns and their data, but also knowledge as well. So the training process was quite thorough. And I think that's also sometimes not factored in. I think there's just one show and tell or one demo, and everyone is supposed to remember that one demo that happened 6 months ago when the initial conversation started. So I think ensuring that proper training is included as a part of your onboarding process, and understanding that not everybody absorbs knowledge at the same rate. So there may have to be do-over sessions, and that can sometimes eat into the time, especially if you have super users. Your super users will need to be trained in a different way to your everyday users. So that definitely needs to be focused when coming into the onboarding, not just, you know, the data and the functionality of it, but also the end. Hear me? Yeah, okay. Yeah, so does anybody else have anything to add, or? Oh, God.
Can I add something we haven't touched base on, but that would be probably my best piece of advice for people listening in. We haven't discussed the best of suite versus best of breed, and by that I mean best of suite. There's a lot of big enterprise clients out there who've purchased ESP CRM platforms and acquired them, made them a part of their stack. But the way I see them is often like there was a consultant describing it to me like watching a kitchen in the theater. It looks really, really good from the outside, but when you get a bit closer, then appliances aren't necessarily plugged in. You'll need to fix things yourself. While the best of breed are those that are newly built within the last 5 years, maybe. They're much more up to date, much more innovative, and no one's ever been fired by choosing an enterprise solution. But definitely give it some thoughts in terms of what are those mid-tiers ones that are best of breed, what are they giving you, because that's where personally I've been seeing loads of advantages that you don't get on the other side. But it's then there are some things on the functionality list that you might not be able to tick off, but then investigate whether that's something that will come down the line from those vendors.
You know, that's really interesting, because at Holistic a couple of years back, we did a survey of marketers, and then we turned it into a report, and it was basically that exactly. So we're looking at, you know, the pros and the cons of, you know, selecting an enterprise system which has all the bells and whistles and everything tapped into it, versus a best of breed, like an iterable, right, where you can go in then and select which particular third party you want to be plugging into, and knowing that you've got a good base, because iterable is only a new system, right? So you're starting, and it's, you know, lean and mean and all that kind of stuff. So what you've got that. And do you know what ended up happening is that Salesforce and all the big, you know, the Adobes, all of those big enterprise systems, they came out with, you know, features. It's got all the features, it's got everything, it's got all the bells and whistles, it's all wonderful. But it was lacking in customer service. It was also, the bells and whistles weren't always easy to use. The features weren't always easy to use. But then the more mid ones, which are the more best of breed, they were easier to use. Plus, they also had better customer service as well. But, you know, go ahead, read that report. It's on our site. Maybe if John's on, he might put the link. And have a read of it, because it basically supports exactly what you were saying.
Totally spot on, Kev. But it takes courage
Yeah.
to select some of the other ones. But it's definitely worth it. And also from your experience, Kev, that's the right choice in the long run.
Amazing. Okay, so now we're coming up to the end of our time. And I have a question to ask you all. Right. You are in an elevator or a lift. Let's say lift, because we all say the word lift. You're in a lift and you have one floor left to impart your most important vendor selection tip. What is it going to be? What nugget are you going to leave us with? You got like 10, 30 seconds before you hit your next floor. Phil, go.
Make sure that you incorporate your tech teams, even if they're super busy, even if they're super reluctant. Otherwise, you will pay for it down the line. So make sure they are involved in the process.
Good tip. Jacob, what's your tip?
Make sure the usability is in place, and don't trust any of the sales guys who says that it's just plug and play, because nothing is ever plug and play.
Thanks, Jacob. Tracy. Go.
Make sure that you always know or always understand what you're looking before. So if you're looking at an RFP, before jumping on an RFP head first, and also make sure that you understand what will be the process during the creation of that RFP and that implementation.
Amazing, good points. And Kath, any final thoughts in while you're in this lift?
Yes, I'm going to just say be very well prepared. I kind of think that sums up everything.
That's like, that's so ominous.
I kind of cheated, but you know, it worked.
So we're like, we have an ominous, be well prepared. You may be going into battle here. So just have your armor ready. We've got Phil who says, we don't give a damn about how busy IT is. You make sure you get them involved. Jacob says, don't believe the sales team. Just get a sandbox. Make sure you test that stuff for yourself. And Tracy's essentially saying, you know, make sure you have a better understanding of your priorities, the landscape, how long things are going to take, so you can also prioritize your own time. I think those are some fantastic nuggets we've got off the lift. We're good to go. And we're now at the end of our session. So, look at that, just spotless. Thank you. So yes, I just want to again give a huge thank you to our sponsors, because now, you know, we've come to the end and this is all we have time today. And I just literally, first I want to thank everyone for on the panel, but I also want to give a big thanks to our sponsors, and that's our gold sponsors, Iterable and Engage, and our silver sponsor, our PE Origin. And of course, I mean, we couldn't leave without saying thank you to our wonderful speakers. So thank you to Jacob, Tracy, and Philip, aka Phil, and also Kath, for providing their invaluable insights. And most of all, I have to thank you guys for watching. So thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to spend it with us. Kath and I will be back on the 25th of May with Victoria Scott of Marks & Spencer, Phil Hill of DoorDash. I've been using that a lot out here in Houston. And Andrea Amboya of Holistic Email, talking about A/B testing and email marketing. So that's something not to miss. And also, if you enjoy learning about email marketing, then why don't you head over to Activate's Summer Europe event on Iterable's site and register. And this is like a really fun interactive event. I did it last year. So it's definitely well worth registering. It's happening on the 25th and 26th of May, and is an event definitely not to be missed. I'm telling you, you get to create your own avatar. Do you get to create your avatar this year, Phil? You get to create an avatar. There was a beach last time. Yeah, it was awesome. So definitely check it out. So yeah, this is the end. We've come to the end of it. I just want to say thank you. Everybody give our audience a big wave.
Yay.
Thanks everyone for joining, and
Thank
we really
you.
do hope that you enjoyed the show. And please, as always, give us your feedback, good or bad. We're here to make sure that these shows are beneficial to you. So thank you for your time and have a wonderful evening.
Thanks.
Cheers, everyone. Bye.
Yes,
Bye.
bye.
Bye.